Well, I was just remembering that my first candidate forum when I was running for Congress was right here in this room. Oh. I was very nervous. Now I'm on my 122nd town hall. Unlike some of my Republican colleagues, I actually enjoy talking to you.
And us, you!
Telling people what's going on and listening to what you have to say. So thank you all so much for coming out today. I want to thank the Seattle Public Library. We are so grateful to the library for all the services that the libraries provide to our community. And next week, I'm actually touring the Seattle Public Library's University Library because I was able to get money, about $1.3 million for seismic upgrades at that. And I also introduced a resolution to recognize our essential library workers across the country because they have been under attack as well. And so I'm really proud to President Trump signed an executive order to eliminate the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and so I was just
Henry, you can sit in your chair.
Of the Seattle Public Library
Foundation
here about the impact that all of these cuts are having for people, and I just want you to know
He's disabled,
to fight for our libraries.
What's that?
Henry?
Yep. We'll just move this.
If there's anything that we can do to help, and we will make sure. Gun safety and gun violence prevention is so important to me, and we're going to make sure that we do everything we can to fight back against that. So thank you so much. There are some people behind you. If you wouldn't mind sitting down, that would be wonderful. Okay. Well, let's continue to.
Yeah.
I want to get going with the town hall. How many of us are here at town hall for the first time? Oh my gosh! Wow! Give yourself a round of applause. I always ask that question because it's really important, I think, that we continue to make sure that people are engaging in our democracy. And I'm proud of this district because we have the most numbers of people that call and write to us and voice their opinions. And to me, that's what democracy is about. I want you to do that. I want to know what you're thinking because that helps inform what I do in Congress. And so thank you all for being so active. I did want to note that today marks a really dark day in history. This is the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. And I think it just serves as a reminder to all of us of the need to work for peace. Yeah. So I want to start with, we got a lively crowd here tonight. I mean, it's Seattle, right? So I wanted to start with just going through quickly some of the things that we're going through in Congress, and then I'll do that quickly, and then we'll turn to you for your questions and answers. So first of all, Epstein, release the damn files. Release the files. I'm home for this is what we call our August work period, so we're back in district. But they actually shut down the House early because they didn't want us to introduce amendments that they would have to vote on to release the Epstein files. And it is really outrageous because this is of their own making. They created a whole conspiracy theory around this, and the reality is that we have somebody who has done the most horrific things to women, to children, and we should see what's in the file, because to me, it should be very clear that if there's nothing to hide, then Donald Trump shouldn't be afraid to release the file. And I think so we have a bipartisan resolution that is on, it's called a discharge petition. And basically, if we can get 218 people to sign it, it means that the bill to demand that the files are released would actually make it to the floor, and if it made it to the floor, it would pass. And so that resolution should be ready to come to the floor, hopefully right after we get back. So they're using this time to twist elbows and arms on their side to get people not to sign that discharge petition. And so we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, Democrats on the Oversight Committee actually forced a vote to subpoena the files.
Yes.
And that passed. And so thank you to Summer Lee, to Robert Garcia, to others on that committee who made that vote happen. And so that passed, and that subpoena was just released today. So the Republicans had no choice but to release that subpoena. And this isn't just about a child sexual molester. This is also about the lies and all of the ways in which this administration has lied to people over and over again. And the betrayal of what they said they cared about and what they're doing, the betrayal of working people and poor people in service to the biggest billionaires, the largest corporations. To me, this is all tied together. This is not a separate issue, right? And so, of course, you go to things like the rescissions package, which right before we came back, they passed something called the rescissions package. And a rescissions package basically means we go through this intricate process, very long and convoluted, to come to agreement between Democrats and Republicans about what the budget should be for the year, what the appropriations should be. And Congress is the only one that has the authority to actually appropriate funds to tell, to say this is how we're going to spend the money. And once we go through that whole process, there are gives and takes, right? One side demands something, the other side, they have to get enough votes to pass it, so it's always a compromise. And then it gets signed into law by the president. A rescissions package says that the president can send over a request to rescind what was agreed to by both sides and signed into law by him. And so what he's doing now is asking for those things to be rescinded that we literally agreed to and signed into law 3 months ago. The last rescissions package that passed was under Clinton, but it was bipartisan. This is the key. There have been rescissions packages in the past that have passed, but they have been bipartisan. Every once in a while, there's a reason why everyone decides, okay, we're going to rescind this amount of money, maybe we're going to put it somewhere else, something like that. But it is a bipartisan vote. This is the first time ever in the history of the country that we have had a partisan rescissions package vote. And that's really important because that means that we agree in a bipartisan way, right? It would be like we make an agreement. You say I need this, I say you need, I need this. We negotiate, we come to agreement, and then once you sign it into law, somebody says, nope, I'm just going to take the stuff I like, and I'm going to leave all the other stuff. And so this rescissions package rescinded all of the money, about $1 billion, for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So that's all of our public radio stations, our public television stations here in Seattle, KUOW, KEXP, KNKX, CBS Cascade television station, stations around the state, and it's also at a roundtable with public broadcasting folks, it's also the Corporation for Public Broadcasting just announced that they're closing now because all of their money has been cut. They also negotiate all the licenses for music. So for KXP, for example, it would be crazy if every individual radio station that was playing music had to negotiate those licenses. That's all gone. all of the infrastructure maintenance for the satellite infrastructure that is required for all of these radio stations to operate across the country. And remember, radio stations are also providing weather alerts, they're providing critical programming, emergency alerts, all of those things. That's all gone. And so it is likely that most of the rural radio stations are going to close. And the impact for free speech, to me this is an attack on free speech.
Yes.
Because that's what public broadcasting is. And so that was part of the rescission package. The other $9 billion that was rescinded was for USAID. So this is all the money that we send overseas to make sure we're working on disease prevention, on vaccine development, on humanitarian assistance, on food assistance. This is the PEPFAR program. Now, they said they're going to keep PEPFAR going. This is the HIV/AIDS program that's been in existence. It was actually signed into law by Bush. It's been bipartisan. It's been incredibly effective. But they are really undermining all of these programs or eliminating them completely in most cases. And so this $9 billion in USAID funding has been rescinded now. This was all passed right before we left. And they're threatening to do more rescission packages. Why is this important? Because we're also in the midst, right when I get back in September, we have to come up with the budget for this last year. We still haven't passed the budget for this last year. We've been working under what's called continuing resolutions, where we just continue the funding, but it ends up being sort of a cut because you're not escalating the money for increases in inflation and things like that. So what's the point of us agreeing to an appropriations budget if they're just going to come back and cut everything that they don't like out of it through these rescission packages? So this is the challenge that we're facing, and they may careen us right into a government shutdown if they don't agree to not put forward these rescission packages anymore. Because I think we have to stand up and be strong that we're not going to agree to So the other thing, obviously, that you've heard a lot about is the big bad betrayal bill. That's what I call it. They call it the big beautiful bill. It's not beautiful at all. It is a big bad betrayal bill, right? So you hear me say big bad betrayal, you know that's the bill that they passed. Why is it a betrayal? Because it is the largest transfer of wealth from poor and working people to the biggest corporations and the richest billionaires. That's what it is. And how do they accomplish that? $5 trillion tax cut, right? It adds over $4 trillion to the national debt. So all that conversation about how Republicans are so fiscally conservative, they just added $4 trillion to the national debt so that they could give a $5 trillion tax cut to the wealthiest. And all of that is accomplished by cutting healthcare, food stamps, jobs, raising energy costs. 17 million Americans, this is the estimate from the bipartisan Congressional Budget Office, 17 million Americans will lose health care. 10 million because of the largest ever cut to Medicaid. The program that serves our elderly, our folks with disabilities, nursing homes, rural hospitals, health care for those who need it. The largest ever cut to Medicaid, $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. That kicks off about 10 million people from their health insurance. And then another 7 million people that are kicked off because of changes to the cuts to the Affordable Care Act. So 17 million people are going to lose health care in a country where we already have 80 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. The richest country in the world, and we have 80 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. That's why I am the lead sponsor of the Medicare for All bill. We should have and I really think that the destruction that they are creating of this healthcare system, the healthcare that we have even, is going to be is going to necessitate us to come up with a healthcare system that actually is universal healthcare. Imagine what that would mean. Just tell me, for how many people in this room would it make a difference if you knew that you had healthcare from the day you are born to the day you die, not tied to your job, not tied to your employment, no pre-existing conditions you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about out-of-network hospitals and doctors. You just get the healthcare you need when you need it. If you have that, how many people would feel like that would change your life?
Oh, yeah.
Because for most people, we've gotten so accustomed to thinking that this isn't possible, but it actually is possible. It's what most rich countries in the world do. We are the outlier that doesn't do that. They are taking the healthcare we have and they're destroying it. Now, on top of that, in the Big Bad Betrayal bill, it cuts about a third of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Heard of SNAP, right? What is SNAP? SNAP is food for the hungry. It's about, on average, $2 a meal for people who are hungry. That's about what it costs, right? $2 a meal, that's what families get. This is the biggest ever cut to SNAP in the history of the program, which has traditionally been a bipartisan program. Now, on top of that, you know energy costs are already rising, and this Big Bad Betrayal bill rolls back all of the progress that we made on taking on climate change and creating green jobs in wind and solar and moving us to a green energy future. It repeals all of that. So make sure that if you're applying for those tax credits that were in the Inflation Reduction Act, you have until the end of this year. So make sure you apply for those now and really are able to get the benefit of that. So, but that's withdrawn in this as of next year. Also, many of you know that I spent a couple of decades working on immigration, starting and leading the largest immigrant advocacy organization in the state now called One America. Thank you. So proud of the organization, still doing great work. This budget, the Big Bad Betrayal bill, supercharges the ICE budget. That is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They are absolutely kidnapping, sending masked men into our streets of our cities in the United States of America to kidnap, detain, and deport people of all legal statuses. This is not about criminals. This is not about people who pose a threat to public safety. This is about people who have committed no crimes, who have actually, in many cases, have legal status. It's even U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens have been kidnapped off the streets and put into detention, and in a couple of cases, even deported. How do you deport a U.S. citizen?
Yeah.
It is absolutely outrageous, and it's why I introduced a bill that says no deportation of U.S. citizens, no kidnapping, detention, and deportation of U.S. citizens. It is already illegal, but frankly, we thought we needed to make the case again, and so we filed another bill for that. But this budget actually supercharges ICE to $42 billion just for detention. We are going to spend more on incarcerating immigrants, and it is incarceration of immigrants, than we spend on the entire Bureau of Prisons. And that's just for the detention part. If you look at all of the DHS budget that goes towards immigration services, it's even bigger than that. So this is the situation we find ourselves in. I will just say something. Every time we're told that there's no money for health care, there's no money for education, there's no money for everything else, the fact that this bill gives a $5 trillion tax break to the wealthiest is just another example of how we as a country do not suffer from scarcity, we suffer from greed. There's plenty of money to do the things that we need to do to take care of people, and yet we don't. We spend it on other things, and it's dictated by our wealthiest corporation, our biggest corporations, and our wealthiest billionaires. The other thing I wanted to mention to you today is redistricting. So you may have been following the news that Trump has said that he needs 5 seats, 5 more seats in the House of Representatives. The way that he is going to do that is by working with the Texas legislature to redistrict and gerrymander and destroy the Voting Rights Act to create 5 seats that Republicans can win. He's trying to make sure that they hold the majority for next year, which I think we will win back without this kind of gerrymander. We will win it back. But if they, that's right, if they cheat, and basically here's what they're doing, right? They're picking the voters that they want to represent. They're saying, I don't want to represent you or you, but yeah, I'll represent you. That's not how this works. You represent the voters that you are given in your district. You are their representative. You don't get to choose who you want in your district. And that's exactly what they're doing. So what the Texas legislators, the Democratic legislators, and the state legislature have done is they've left Texas to try to deny quorum. And so that is the current strategy. Governor Abbott has said that they are going to, after they're destroying the Voting Rights Act, they're gerrymandering the district, but they want to arrest the Democratic legislators who are saying, we're not going to go along with your illegal actions. They want to arrest those people. So now it's called for the arrest of them. So what do we do? I think, as you may have seen, there's an effort of Democratic governors, including in California, New York, I think Washington is the candidate, to say, if you do this, then we will do the same in our states so that we can restore the Voting Rights Act again. But don't take us for chumps. You're not going to play on an illegal field and then expect us to play on a different field. And so that is the proposal that's on the table in California right now, and we're looking at other options. All right. You want some good news? Here's the good news. First of all, this room is full. Here's the good news. This room is tanking. Okay? It is absolutely tanking. And the reality is that he has a 37% approval right now in the country. That is the lowest that it's ever been. On immigration, which was the issue that he ran on and weaponized, frankly, and made people think that somehow immigrants were the ones, immigrants or trans kids are to blame for your rents going up or for your health care costs going up. He was quite strong on the issue of immigration, but he has really tanked. On the issue of immigration, he has a 35% approval rate. So I think this is important, and the reason I mention that is because that has happened because people like you have used your voices. You have showed up, you have gone to protest, you have written in, you have done things to protect your neighbors, you have made sure you're talking about it. These are the things that actually make a difference in a situation where we are in a very difficult time in our country, and I think we've become somewhat complacent as Americans. We thought that democracy was just going to happen and maybe we didn't need to do anything, and we had checks and balances, right? We're so proud of our checks and balances. Well, the problem is the checks and balances require that the majority party, the party in control, doesn't give up their power, right? It depends on Congress actually voting to convict somebody who incited insurrection on January 6th. And so while I was on the first impeachment trials, we've impeached Trump twice in the House of Representatives, but it wasn't able to get the 2/3 majority that it needed in the Senate because Republicans wouldn't vote for it. And so if Congress lies down and refuses to use its power, that's one check on. If the judiciary lies down and refuses to use his power because they've got some corrupt MAGA Supreme Court justices who are overturning precedent of 50 years in some cases in their decisions for a luxury yacht or an RV or whatever it is they're getting. Then now your judiciary system is also corrupted. And then what happens? The only check, real check to authoritarian power is
The people.
you. No pressure here. No pressure. But this is really what we have to focus on, the organizing, and I'm going to do everything in my power to use my hearings, my legislative power, my convening power. I am fighting back in all of my hearings. Maybe you've seen some of the videos that have gone viral of me questioning some of these people that are so incompetent. Oh, yeah. It's really stunning. One of them has 7 million views. This woman couldn't even answer, whether the State Department was keeping language skills at the State Department. Anyway, we're going to use all those tools, but really what it comes down to is educating yourselves about how to fight back against authoritarian power nonviolently, using Dr. King's nonviolent resistance principles, and we do that on the campaign side for our resistance labs. You can go to resistancelab.us to sign up for that. But that is really the work that is in front of us. We have to be a strong opposition party. There's no question about it. We got to stiffen our spines. We got to stand up for the things we believe in. We got to fight for working people and poor people. We also have to be a proposition party. We have to call people into our vision. It's not enough that people just don't want Republicans. We also need the country to believe in Democrats. And for Democrats, for our party to stand up and fight back, to bring back independence, yes, and Republicans, yes, but also the 80 to 100 million people who would naturally be Democrats but aren't voting right now because they lost faith in government. Because they should have a roof over their head. They should be able to afford to live with just one job instead of 3 by raising the minimum wage. They should have health care from the day they're born to the day they die. They should have a planet to pass on to their kids. People should be able to retire with dignity. That's a very simple vision, but it is also something that we have to be willing to fight for. And that is the proposition that I am here to represent every day. And to stiffen our spines, to build our movement, and to make sure that we give every single person in this room, every income level, every race, every thing that you can imagine, everyone should have the opportunity to not just survive, but to thrive. And so that's what I promise to do, fight for you. And I think we are ready to get to your questions. Thank you all so much for listening.
For questions, we're going to have a line on each side, and you have 1 minute to ask your question.
Yeah, we got this down to it. So we'll be line up on each side, bring the microphone to you.
I'm good. I ain't fallen in 3 days. Get out of here.
Just so you know, our team, instead of having done 122 of these town halls, they will hold the mic for you, because we love you, but we know sometimes you can get wordy.
My reputation precedes me. Oh, I'm fine.
Also, just before we start with questions, let me just say, I have an amazing team of people, both in the district and in DC. They are here to work for you. Any issue that you have with a federal government agency, you can contact our office. We have been able to bring millions of dollars back to constituents. And so, team, raise your hand. Let us give you a round of applause. Interpreters tonight for that we are providing accessibility for everybody. All right, so we'll start with our first question. We'll go on this side.
Hello, Representative Jayapal. I've been seeking assistance from your office. I've been seeking assistance.
That mic is not working, guys.
Okay, cool.
Okay, why don't we see if we can go to the other side, and we'll come right back to you if that one's working.
Hi, Representative Jayapal. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time and appreciate all the hard work that you do, and I've even gone back for your teacher and your program. Yeah.
Can I hold that microphone right up to so I'm sure?
Seattle candidate for mayor Katie Wilson has been compared to New York's Soren Nagami, who supported but we've endorsed Bruce Harrell, who's a more centrist and friendly with big businesses. Are you now ready to endorse Katie Wilson as mayor?
Great night for President. Katie did an amazing job. This is an official side of town halls. I'm not allowed to answer campaign-related questions, but I will just say that, look, I'm just really happy that we have such strong candidates and progressive candidates that are winning. And Katie did an amazing job, so congratulations to her.
Just
for
go
really
down there and make it
tremendous-
happen.
Yeah.
See that, brother?
Hello, Representative Jayapal. I've been seeking assistance from your office for more than 5 years now about the staffing and, in my opinion, continuing lack of safety culture in the agency I work for regarding public safety. I've met numerous times with your staff to explain my concerns and illustrate how the agency's own policies hinder or completely inhibit the resolutions they claim will fix the problems they say they're aware of and have plans to remedy. After years of being patient and hopeful of any type of substantial action from your office, I was more or less given the PR releases from the two organizations you made inquiries to. I know these talking points as I brought them up to your staff's attention and explained why they're meaningless. My trust in our government and the elected representatives continues to fray as there's never any actual accountability and it all comes down to sound bites that sound great but are empty as the promises made on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will look into, I am not aware of your case, but I'm certainly happy to look at it myself. I will say that we try to do everything we can, and I feel like our team is like bulldogs. That doesn't always mean that we get the answer that we want, but let me look at your case and make sure I understand what's going on, and we'll get back to you about that. But thank you so much for hanging in there, and I'm sorry that the system seems to have failed you.
Thank you.
Hi, Representative Jayapal. I am a volunteer leader with Save the Children Action Network for Washington State. We are the voice of kids because kids can't vote. And I'm here today to ask you a question about the child care tax credit. My question is that it's set to be cut in half for over 40 million families by the end of this year. If we don't extend the CTC and Jobs Act, how will you protect the CTC during tax reform this year?
Yeah, thank you so much. The CTC, the child tax credit, is something that under Democrats, we were able to pass an expanded child tax credit, which, just imagine this, cut child poverty in half. In half. We did that. We did that through the child tax credit. And then Republicans refused to continue it. So they cut it back, and now they're cutting it even further. And this is all, by the way, they're saying, oh, we're extending the child tax credit. But no, they're cutting it, and they're giving the tax breaks to the wealthiest, but they won't extend the child tax credit. And so we are working to reform the entire tax system. They're also rolling back in this bill all of the, many of the tax cuts that reforms that we were able to get into the Inflation Reduction Act that finally required the wealthiest to pay a little bit more of their fair share. We even put a lot of money into the IRS to go after the wealthiest tax cheats in the country. And it was bringing back over $1 trillion in revenue just by going after those tax cheats. But they've taken all of that away. And so from the level of stripping child tax credits to the level of benefiting the wealthiest, this is why I say it's a big bad betrayal. So we are trying to get back into power so that we can go back to reforming the tax system. It's also, by the way, why I have a wealth tax with Elizabeth Warren. here's the thing, we have the highest wealth inequality that we've ever had in history. And so my wealth tax just says if you have $50 million in assets, anyone in here with 50 million? Your first 50 million is free and clear, so don't have to worry. But if you've got between 50 and 100 million, you just give us 2 cents on every dollar. You get to keep 98 cents, you just give us 2 cents. If you are over 100 million in wealth, you just give us 3 cents, right? And that creates trillions of dollars of revenue that we could put into the child tax credit, into healthcare, into all of the other things. And I think we really need not just reform of income taxes, but we need a wealth tax so that we can actually start.
There you go.
Oh, I see. All right, Donald Trump has broken so many laws, and he has gone against the Constitution, and yet he still gets away with it, and though we try to do something, he still goes on and on and on. I think we need to fight the same way he does towards us. And if we have to break some rules in the Constitution, we've got to fight back. We've got to do what he's done to us. We've got to get our country back. I think we've been too fair, too nice. We can't be nice anymore. We've got to fight. The other, non-violently, but we've got to fight. If MAGA elected Putin as president, our country would go mad. We'd go violently, and we would fight it. We wouldn't vote, we would take him out. Well, Trump is Putin. We have got to get our country back. And our money, our taxes are paying for Trump, are paying for all of the people that are in his cabinet and for Congress. We're paying them to destroy us. We have to get in there. Not what the Constitution says. We've got to get in as people and say, we're taking your money away, we're taking your jobs away, we're not doing by the Constitution.
Yeah.
We are in charge.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree. Yeah, well said. I've been the chair of the Progressive Caucus. I was the chair of the Progressive Caucus for 6 years. I feel like I've been pushing hard to get my own party to stand up and to fight back and to really make sure that we are fighting with everything we have, because these are not normal times. Sometimes we get the question, maybe some of you have it here, isn't there any way to work in a bipartisan way to get things done? And I would just say, not really anymore. Maybe that will change. We're always looking for opportunities. In fact, I've done a lot of bipartisan work on privacy with Republicans, on FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, on antitrust. We have been able to do that work in the past. But this is not that time. These Republicans are lying down to Donald Trump, who is destroying our Constitution. And so it's very difficult to find Republicans who are willing to stand up. Now, the good news is I've had Republicans at my town halls, maybe there are some here tonight, and you'd be welcome. Because I represent all my constituents. And I've had people say to me, this is not what I voted for. This is not my Republican Party anymore. Where are the values of the Republican Party, of family, of faith, of all of the things that, of even fiscal conservatism? And so we have to be willing to be strong and to fight back. And when we get back into power, we also have to be willing to take down the structural problems that are preventing us from getting real things done. Right? We have to get money out of politics. We should reform and expand the Supreme Court. We should get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. These are the things that have prevented us from doing the things that the American people, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, want. And if we don't deliver on those things, we're going to continue to have people lose faith in government. That's already happened, because who can understand why the federal minimum wage is stuck at just over $7 an hour? That's ridiculous, right? There's not a single place in this country where you can afford a 2-bedroom apartment on the minimum wage. How is that possible in the richest country in the world? Right here in the 7th Congressional District, one of the richest districts in the country, we have 10% of kids under 18 in poverty. We have folks who are houseless. Homelessness is not a crime. It is not a personal crime. We have to get housing for people and supportive housing so that people can actually afford to live. Everyone deserves to have a roof over their head. We gotta be able to get some of those things done because people need to wake up in the morning and feel like, hey, my life is better. Government is responding to me, not government is set back, 20 years, 30 years away. So I totally agree with you. Sorry, sorry, yeah.
Hi, I look across this room and I see that it skews largely white and over the age of 55. We had an election yesterday in which less than 22% of registered voters came out and participated. 83% of the Democratic base support an arms embargo on Israel. Yet, the Democratic Party decimates the trust of its base by continuously voting to send weapons to Israel. You had an opportunity to cut $500 million in military aid to a rogue terrorist entity that is also a nuclear power that has bombed every single neighboring country and is actively committing a genocide, and you chose not to withhold those funds from that terrorist entity. So my question to you is, when will you stop supporting genocide because you have lost voters and entire voter demographics over it?
Thank you. I am one of the very few members of Congress that has sponsored the Block the Bombs bill, co-lead actually, the Block the Bombs bill. I, along with Bernie Sanders, sponsored the joint resolutions of disapproval. I have consistently called for us to stop offensive military assistance to Israel, and I've been very vocal about this. I believe what's happening, what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza is a genocide. And that has been difficult, frankly, because I know that word is very painful for many of my Jewish constituents and friends and allies. It's not a word I use lightly. I actually did a lot of research into genocide and read Israeli scholars and Holocaust survivors and experts on this, as well as Jewish American scholars and experts on this. I have consistently voted against offensive aid. The challenge has been around defensive aid for the Iron Dome, which has been protecting Israeli civilians. And I think Palestinian civilians and Israeli civilians deserve to have protection. Now that said, we are at a place where I am evaluating all military assistance, and I will make my decisions as they come up. But that's the vote you're talking about. I would just invite you to look at all my other votes, because I think you have to look at this in the context of where the bombs are coming from is from the offensive aid that the United States is sending. It isn't, no, I understand. Money is fungible. Well, that's exactly, the Leahy laws apply to the offensive funding. And so we should be, I understand, sir, money is fungible, and that is why I am now in a place where I'm looking at this issue very closely. I have in the past felt like it is important to defend the lives of Israelis as well. But the challenge I have now is that I don't want to continue to fund defensive assistance if the country that we're funding it for is just going to turn around and bomb 5 other countries or community. And so to me now, that's where we sadly are, is that I have criticized every bombing that's happened, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and I feel like if we're going to provide a defensive aid system, then the country has to respect that by not then going and bombing other countries. And so this is, I'm in the process of looking at this very question. To me, there has been a difference in the past, but it's getting very difficult to make that argument given what the Israeli government is doing. And so I'm going to continue to, push for stopping the funding of U.S. bombs. Yeah, I heard you. I agree with you. I think that it is, he said fungible in case anyone didn't hear. And I think that that's true. Look, this is a really hard issue, and I've been out there and attacked, absolutely attacked. I was one of the first members of Congress to come out and call for a ceasefire days after October 7th, because I knew that we cannot destroy people we have to follow humanitarian law. And I've been attacked for this. AIPAC has come after me. They've tried to run people against me. They've defeated my sister in Portland. And it's been really tough. I'm one of the very few in Congress. And so I understand you can be angry with me on that vote. And, that's respect. I respect that. But I will just tell you, the challenge we have here is that we need more than, I think it's been just a couple of dozen people who have voted with us or who have sponsored the Block Bombs bill, the JRDs, all of these other things. And I think the Democratic Party needs to wake up on this issue, and we need to actually implement our domestic laws and our international humanitarian laws.
You're one of the best.
Okay. Thank you very much for your excellent work and your staff as well. For a while now, I've been studying one thing that's been steamrolling the nation's interests, and that's the oligarchy, big money. We know that.
Sorry, can you hold that closer for you?
And another large element that I've been studying for a while is that of Christian nationalism. Not Christianity, Christian nationalism. In 2018, Catherine Stewart wrote a book titled The Power Worshippers, which is the source book for a documentary called Bad Faith, an essential element of education for the voters in this nation. I'd like you to speak to, especially given the Democrats' need for effective messaging, another topic, Christian nationalism. Please talk to us about that element, which is also steamrolling America.
It really is, and thank you so much for that. The separation of church and state is a part of this. It has been part of our democracy, and one of the serious things, I'm a member of something called the Free Thought Caucus in Congress, and we really focus on the issue of Christian nationalism and all of the ways in which religion is suddenly being intertwined, and it's not just religion, but Christian nationalism is being intertwined, whether it's through our speaker, Speaker Johnson, not my speaker, but our the speaker in the House of Representatives, who has, the way in which religion is creeping into everything that we are doing in a very Christian nationalistic perspective. That is extreme and is exclusive of other faiths or of no faith, and that has very specific ideology around everything from the role of women, what a family looks like, so many different pieces. And so through the Free Thought Caucus, we've been writing a lot of letters to the speaker when something happens on the floor, like we have prayers that, in my view, are extreme Christian fundamentalist prayers. They shouldn't be happening on the floor of the House. There are, well, I know which we draw attention to this. We don't have control of the House of Representatives. The bigger issues are, how do we build the movement that we need on the outside, right? So through my resistance lab, we've been training, we've now trained over 11,000 people in all 50 states in just 3.5 months on how you fight back against authoritarian institutions. And for all the frustration that anyone might have, I would just say everyone has to be a part of this project. Because the checks and balances that I was talking about don't work. I'm sorry to be here telling you that. They don't work. So you can't just rely on Congress to stop all of this. It's not going to happen. It has to stop through the people. And so I've been thinking about our platform primarily as being, how do we use our platform to organize? How do we bring attention to the issue of Christian fundamentalism in this country, and the way in which it was part of the ideology, it was part of Project 2025, very much so, and it is part of the entire frame of how this Republican Party is operating today. So thank you for raising it, and we'll continue to do as much as we can.
I've written and been to multiple town halls. Your values, I think, are laudatory. I think all of our values. That's not the issue. The issue is what we're doing isn't working. We've done nothing but play defense. It's like sticking fingers in the dike again and again. The bills aren't working. The judiciary isn't working. The hope that next year all of it will fall together. It's evaporating before our eyes. Business as usual is not working. So if you want us to do more, you have to do more. Which means calling us all to march on Washington, to do something like they did in Texas. They did something disruptive. And that made them stand up and notice. It made it hard for them. They've done nothing but make it hard on us. And I don't get the play that you do. I can go call a room full of people. Hey, let's do this. I've marched, I've written, I've talked. It's not working. You need bigger. And they're like, oh, this is amazing, we're together. Enough. Call for something more. Demand it. Be there with us. Be the face in the front, because people can't get that all the people.
Amen.
Yeah, well, listen, I agree with anything you said. But, well, I am. I can't just call for a march on Washington with 11 million people. If I could, I would do it tomorrow. I would have done it 6 months ago. If I could have called for, excuse me, ma'am, if I could have called for the Senate to convict Donald Trump when I almost lost my life on January 6th, I would have done it.
Yes.
I would have done it. Here's what I would say. The frustration that people feel, I get it. I really do. I feel it every day. I was in the grocery store the other day, and I had 3 individual people come up to me in those 10 minutes that I was in the grocery store. And everybody, was thanking me, but then burst into tears, individually. I'm not talking about the 3 of them came up together. Individually. People are telling me about the healthcare that was about the attacks on food assistance. All of the things that we are dealing with are real. This is what happens when authoritarians and dictators come in and take over. The only thing I can say to you, in all of your frustration, is this is not an overnight project. You wanted it done yesterday, I wanted it done years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
The reality is, you and I, we are in this together. And I will do everything I can in my power to use my position, my platform, to organize, to call for change, to stand up strong, to push my own damn party to be strong. But I need you to do it as well. And that's why you're here tonight. That's why I appreciate you. But remember that every time you think that there's someone that could have saved you, there isn't.
That's right.
There isn't. I don't want to depress you with that fact. But if you look at Sudan, If you look at countries around the world that have fallen, democracies that have fallen to dictators, understand that those systems failed. And ultimately, it was the people coming together and figuring out ways that you can make a difference at the local level, at the state level, at the national level. There will be moments, and I hope we're building to one, where there will be a massive disruptive action. We need, in order for that to happen, we need people to understand how democracies fall. We need people to understand how to fight back against dictators. This is not something we've had to do in any recent history in the United States. And so we have to understand how that works. That's what my resistance lab training is all about. It's about actually analyzing what happens when democracies fall. And what are the effective ways to take it on? It's not just a march, it's not just a disruptive action. We actually have to figure out how to take out the pillars of support that prop up the dictator. It is complex. And not everybody is where we are in this room. We lost an election. I'm not going to comment on the specifics of that. There are many reasons for that. But we actually are not in power. So the challenge now is to figure out not just how to get back into power. Yes, we need to take back the House, we need to take back the Senate, we need to win the next presidential, but it's actually bigger than that. We have to figure out, when we get back into power, we have to figure out what is a real structure that has checks and balances. How do we change the Constitution so that we don't have this happen again, right? There's a lot of big things that we have to do. So I really get your frustration. I would just say, don't turn it on me. I mean, I don't mind if you want to yell at me. I'm here to do that. You like to be. But I would just say, think about what you can do. Have you educated yourselves completely on how democracies fall and the most effective ways to fight back? We've trained 11,000 people, and we're trying to get up to, continue to do it. We're doing these trainings every month. And we're working with the coalition of unions and progressive organizations to really figure out how do we fight back. But I want you to understand it's not easy. This is not an easy situation. And so it's going to take some time. And I would just ask for you to continue to have faith and to not become hopeless or powerless. Because hopelessness and powerlessness are the tools of the oppressor. Right? So don't allow that to happen. Just really focus on how you can make a difference, how we can make a collective difference.
Name the Democratic leaders that need to step aside so that we can respond to what she's saying. You guys too scared of the heart.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to our next.
Let's go to our next question.
We have to come together. Well, here we are.
Yeah. You gotta do more than this.
Do not talk to others.
You gotta get out the ball.
I think we're gonna go to our next question now. Just can you please ask your
Dear Representative, on behalf of practitioners in the greater Seattle area, I'm honored to share our joy of our 20th anniversary in participating Seafair Torchlight Parade. So thanks to this great event, which united tens of local practitioners across multiple generations of diverse cultural backgrounds, which to me really reflects the Seattle spirit of diversity and community. So to mark this milestone, we presented the wood flower, which is a legend in Buddhist tradition, representing peace and beauty. It only blooms every 3,000 years. Wow. It's super pretty. I honestly designed part of it. We also present, to capture the moment in this postcard, we really wanted to appreciate your devotion to local community and your support to our organization as well.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you for doing Resistance Labs. I agree that it's going to take every single one of us that is capable and has capacity to do everything that we can to fight authoritarianism. It is on all of us. That said, my question for you is, I have a chronic autoimmune disease. I rely on specialty medication that you can't get at any regular pharmacy that costs about $100,000 a year. I'm very lucky to have insurance that covers it. I just went through 5 years of onset to I'm finally in stable remission for my disease, thanks to really good healthcare and a really great team at UW. And I've heard you talk a lot about Medicaid and staff and healthcare in general. I would like to hear from you. I'm immune compromised and I will be for the rest of my life. I'd like to hear from you what you are doing about RFK Jr. and his eugenics.
RFK Jr.
Yeah, no, and the anti-vax, I mean, he just got rid of the entire vaccine development program, as well. And sometimes, you know, I was born in India. I'm one of the 19 naturalized citizens in Congress, and I have been asked at various times when I think about vaccines. I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for vaccines. And all of the science and the research into what effective treatments and therapies are, vaccines, everything. What RFK Jr. is doing is just horrific. I mean, I not only. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're probably. I think you're probably. It's a tough call overall, but I think what he's doing to destroy health and human services and to destroy science and research and basic public health. I mean, all of our public health work, both here and also abroad. I mean, this also is USAID funding that goes into preventing the spread of disease. Even samples, I was just meeting with some researchers who were telling me that they can't even get samples in of diseases that are appearing around the world that we used to analyze at the CDC because we've cut all of that money. So we are, obviously trying to get all of that funding restored, but that's one piece of the work we have to do. The second piece, I think, is, we've got to get him out of there. And we've really, the damage that he's doing and the rebuilding is going to be really challenging on this, because with all these agencies, the destruction they're doing. So when we do get power back, not only do we have to stop the funding cuts, but we're going to have to rebuild all of these agencies. We're losing, and I don't know if there are any federal workers here, but thank you. Federal workers here. But we lost, between Doge and RFK and all of the other agency heads, we lost all of the talent in these areas. So if there's anything that our office can do on your medications, I don't know if there is, but and I can make sure we get some, and let's see if we can do anything on that specific issue. But thank you, and I'm sorry you're having to go through that.
Hi, I'm a United States Marine, disabled from 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Weapons Company. For people who don't know, that's the people who left to be muscle for Trump's goon squad in Los Angeles. Now, I used to be proud to be a Marine, but now there's a stain on our record. We have a flippin' great record. And now every Marine who's come before these and every Marine who comes after is going to be drugged down by this. And if it was my battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Van Riper, who's a legend, would never have sent us, and there's not a person in my unit who would have went. Go ahead and send us to the brig. Write us up to UCMJ. We don't care. Take us on. And Trump, if you're listening, I'm right here. I'm easy to find. The other thing I got to say is big dumper for MVP, go Mariners. And yeah, that's it.
Good job.
Big dumper for MVP, go Mariners. And if you could get us a pen and work on that.
I'll work on that. First of all, thank you for your service.
Hey, one last thing. If you want to thank a vet, vote! All right, I'm done.
Thank you for your service. And, when I saw what was happening in LA with our own troops being used against people on U.S. soil, calling the National Guard, the Marines. Now they're using unmarked vans. I don't know if you saw this, but now they're starting to use unmarked vans in Los Angeles. You know, it's just, it's hard to believe that this is happening in our country, and your voice is so powerful. Yes. I mean, it really is, and I want to thank you for speaking out, because I've had people in our armed forces come out and say the same thing that you said. And some of the organizing in those places, one of the things we talk about in the Resistance Lab is that often when the military did not shoot at people even though they were ordered to, it was because those military officers decided that that was not what they had pledged their lives for. And they actually resisted. And that ability to give courage to, you know, within the troops. In the first Trump term, Mark Milley kind of stopped some of this from happening. That's not the case in this Trump term. He doesn't have, he's deliberately put people in who are not going to tell him to not do anything. And so I think some of the work we could use your help with is how do we organize within the Marines, right? How do we organize within our troops? How do we make sure that we are getting people like you who understand that the stain on our troops is going to be, you know, unfairly but long-lasting if this continues to happen. So thank you for that. And please be in touch with us and how we can get more of you to speak out.
Thank you, Pramila.
Hi, my name is Scott Aldridge from Our Revolution and the Washington State Democratic Party Central Committee. I wanted to ask about one of the billionaires orbiting the Trump administration, Peter Thiel, and his company Palantir. He's given a number of speeches expressing contempt for the democratic process and voters, as well as the constitutional civil liberties and protections. He has been using his companies to encroach on areas that ought to be the responsibility of federal employees. This has allowed CIA and military operations on U.S. soil in violation of several laws on universal surveillance. I also believe that he directed Visa and MasterCard to act as censors to content being published on Steam, particularly Valve, in violation of the First Amendment. What can you do to stop Peter Thiel and tech oligarchs more generally from abusing their monopoly powers?
So here's an example of where I think all of the public advocacy around Palantir is really, really important. Remember Tesla takedowns, right? Tesla takedowns, local activists organizing, probably many of you went to the Tesla takedown rallies, and made it so that the richest man in the world had to step out and had to go back to Tesla, and you know we got him out of government now. Lots of issues there, but I think that Palantir is another opportunity for us. I think there are a lot of people who don't know about Palantir and what Palantir is doing. So Our Revolution, More Perfect Union, we're working with a number of groups to elevate the knowledge of Palantir within ICE, within all of our systems, and their role. And so I think there is some local organizing that can be done around Palantir that is starting to happen now that can really elevate this. And then obviously, once we have control again, we can stop those contracts and all of the other things that Palantir is being used for right now. But I do think this is a local organizing, a national organizing opportunity, a local organizing opportunity is what our Rev has been working on. And we've been very tightly engaged with that as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for your own bravery. I am going to read from something everyone should read and then ask a question. It's On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. The first one is Do Not Obey in Advance. And the last one is Be as courageous as you can. And it says, If none of us is prepared to die for freedom, then all of us will die under tyranny. And some of this is from the resistance labs you ran, and I urge people to take advantage of them. And these are my questions. When you talk about Americans, you don't talk about the American government, you talk right now about Trump and then people disagreeing. I wish you would do the same with Israel. Most Israelis loathe Netanyahu. They are out there in the streets. They are, so that is part of the conversation. So I wish you would do that as well, because nobody here would say they're for Trump. And if you were all Israelis, very few would say you're for Netanyahu and the right-wing government. And my question is, what do we do about the Supreme Court? I mean, I mean, we can't wait to get 3 more normals in there. Thank you.
Yeah, we are normal. Thank you for your comments. Yes, and this is we talk about what it takes to build courage, right? Like our ability to take risks as individuals and as a collective. How do you get people to a place, because everyone has different considerations, but ultimately the kind of resistance that's needed to take down an authoritarian or dictator involves tremendous risk. And so, you know, I think that is part of what we talk about in the Resistance Lab. Just on the Israeli people, I think this is a really important distinction because we've worked with groups like Standing Together and others who have come to Congress, and you know, I just so respect the organizing that they are doing in Israel. And if you watch videos, you see more and more Israelis on the streets who also believe that there is no peace and security without peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians. So very important distinction to make. What to do about the Supreme Court? Yes, well, look, I've got a bill to expand the Supreme Court, to add 4 seats to the Supreme Court. I have a bill on Supreme Court ethics and transparency, because right now, this is the only court in the land that does not have any accountability and requirements. And so it is really stunning to see that, you know, whether or not they're ethical is just voluntary. And so that makes no sense. So we have a number of things, but again, that requires us to be in power and to get rid of the filibuster. Remember, the filibuster is a legacy of Jim Crow. The filibuster is the rule that says that 40 mostly white guys, love you all, white men. There's a white hand, there he is. We love you, but the 40 mostly white men who represent 12% of the country's population get to block any bill, not just from being voted on, but from being debated. That's what the filibuster is. And so, if we're going to reform the Supreme Court, if we're going to pass a higher minimum wage, if we're going to, make sure that we expand the Voting Rights Act, if we're going to get money out of politics and end Citizens United, all of these things require that we get rid of filibuster and have a simple majority in the Senate, just like we have a simple majority in the House, that can actually move bills along, because this is no longer a country where the people on the other side are willing to do any of the things that are even good for their constituents. Otherwise, they wouldn't have voted for a big bad betrayal bill that struck 17 million Americans across here. Many of those people are in those districts. Mike Johnson's home state of Louisiana has 60% of the births in Louisiana are funded by Medicaid. And he voted to cut Medicaid. So that's what we need to do on the Supreme Court.
You mentioned Epstein, secret files. So the philosopher whose books I gave to you last time, the 3 books, Heaven March. Anyways, in the early 2010s, she had a project called Off Death Eaters. She exposed the entire Epstein network, so she was censored and then basically, what's the term? flooded with misinformation, or she was drowned out with QAnon and Pizzagate. She was driven off of Twitter. She's the only speaker at Oxford Union to ever be censored. She was on the panel with CIA operative David Shedd. You know, I don't know her moment. Yeah. So I just wanted to know that, like, all that stuff, like, it's already public, and, like, she's already disclosed it, but it's just, like, she's been censored and figured out.
Well, if it's about a particular person, I didn't fully understand, is that what it was?
Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, Epstein!
Yeah.
Oh.
Everything about him is already public, because Heather Marks has already published all of it. It's just that she's been censored year after year. Social media, Oxford, you name it.
Yeah. Thanks for raising that. I mean, you know, look, I think we have so much misinformation, disinformation on the Epstein files in particular. To me, it's just very clear that there's so much evidence, so much information out there about Jeffrey Epstein, what he did, about Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't trust that the Department of Justice going to interview Ghislaine Maxwell in a prison cell by themselves is trustworthy. I don't know what deals they made to transfer to a lesser security prison. I don't know what deals they're cutting with her, so we'll continue to be on that.
Hi, Representative Jayapal. I'm Christy Morgan, dedicated to serving unhoused folks for the past 7 years. I urge you to challenge Donald Trump's dangerous executive order ending crime and disorder on America's streets, which threatens Washington's progress in mental health, housing, and disability rights. In this divided time, we must unite to protect what matters to all people. This order attacks our constitutional rights, such as due process, prohibitions against cruelty, and equal protection. Our successful models, permanent supportive housing and harm reduction, have transformed lives where punishment has failed. Now, this order and the upcoming cuts to Medicaid and veteran benefits would jeopardize this progress. Medicaid supports 25% of Americans, including individuals with disabilities and veterans, providing crucial mental health care. These cuts are cruel and abandon our most vulnerable. Representative Jayapal, what specific actions are you taking now to defend our constitutional protections and ensure Washington remains compassionate to our most vulnerable communities?
Thank you so much. I feel very strongly about this. I said earlier, you know, that everyone deserves a roof over their heads, that homelessness is not a personal failing, it is a policy failing. And to me, it's really important that we don't criminalize homelessness, and so I have a bill that I just introduced with Maxwell Frost called Housing Not Handcuffs. I have another bill called Housing is Human Rights that is really about the kinds of investments into the wraparound services that you were talking about. And so those are our forward-looking. I feel like we know what to do on this issue, we just haven't done it. We haven't invested in housing first and the housing first model, which we know works. And so we got very close during Build Back Better. We would have gotten the largest investment in housing ever, but we couldn't get it past Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin in the Senate. We passed it in the House, $1.5 trillion investment in housing. As well as supportive services like mental health and all the other things that we need to wrap around. So I have been able to bring millions of dollars back to the district for housing projects here that are supportive housing projects. In fact, I was just visiting a couple the other day. And so we've been trying to work on that level, but then also working with our city. We funded the LEAD program and, you know, have been working to try to make sure that we're addressing homelessness from a compassionate place. In terms of Trump's executive orders, we're fighting them all in every way we can. We're fighting them in the courts. I was on the amicus brief around Grants Pass to stop criminalizing homelessness. And so we're doing all of that work, but well, let me put it kindly, he is not a compassionate person. And so we have to take back our country and our values and treat people with the dignity that they deserve.
Thank you.
Before we go to the next question, we have less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
So just so you know, and
Okay.
yeah,
Should we take
we want to
a
get,
couple at a
yeah,
time?
maybe we should get maybe those 3 on this side, then we'll come over and we'll take the questions on this side.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay.
3 on this side. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Pat McKee, and I'm a father and grandfather and a retired union member. First of all, the idea that these guys are abrogating all these contracts with federal unions is just shameful. You sign a contract, that's your contract, that's the deal you make. But I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for organizing these resistance labs in town. I have a strategy question for you. Orders are Tom Homan has promised that militarized ICE units will be descending on Seattle and Portland in force, literally any day, in what feels like a blatant attempt at provocation, to justify some further incursion. Once they're here, though, once they're in place and established, it's going to be hard to evict them, and inevitably there's going to be this institutional temptation to carry on with business as usual. The Mariners are playing good ball, the cruise ships are full, people got to go to work. And as an elected official representing Seattle, what are you proposing to do on the first day of this illegal domestic invasion? And what would you advise us? What would you advise us to do? I'm worried that as of day 2, resistance is already going to get, exponentially harder.
This is about ICE coming in? Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much for being here. Someone else brought up the problem of Christian nationalism, which I also feel strongly about, wanted to ask about. There's a lot of problems with it, and one of the ones that I think gets to a lot of people is the outstanding hypocrisy, because in all this Christian nationalism, it's suspiciously bereft of the words of Jesus, because a lot of the red text supports leftist fucking programs, supports getting food to people and hungry people, giving water to people who are thirsty, supporting human dignity, whether you agree with them or not. So other people talk about fighting private fire, and I think this is an issue that is right, that as long as there's already been so many exemptions carved out for Christianity, instead of trying to pull back and maintain the secular, it's time that we started fighting fire with fire and telling them to put their money where their mouth is. If they want to talk about how important Jesus is to them and how important Christianity is to them, then vote against water for people when we put the red text in there that Jesus says, give people water, give people food, give people a roof. Preach.
Tax the churches.
I'm just really glad to be here, and it's really nice to be among a lot of people who know as much as we know because we care about what's happening. And I just want to say we're outliers. So many people have no idea what's happening. And I feel like part of that is the language that Democrats use. I love your betrayal, your big betrayal bill. If every Democrat always talked about it in those terms, I think, that's just one example, but I think we need to unite. We need to unite in the language that we're using, because Republicans do that really, really well. The beautiful skies bill or whatever that destroys Montana's parks, in the Bush time. They use language really well, and I think we need to be doing that too. And in addition to using the language, I love how you've been talking today about what's being taken away and being really honest about that. And I think we need to be doing that as well, because people don't know.
Yeah. No, exactly right. Exactly right. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'll take the question for you, if you're in line. Yeah.
You spoke of housing as a right recently and healthcare as a right earlier. And I'd like to know, in the context of what you're talking about, when we take back power, we're going to be rebuilding infrastructure. if you also finally get on board with towards education as right and canceling all student debt, which you haven't been supportive of yet.
Canceling all student debt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were going to sign on to some letter that was being circulated earlier, like from
Okay.
like.
Okay. And you're asking if I would support that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna try to, I took some notes, so hopefully I got all of the questions. First of all, union member, all the union members, we love our unions. We are proud of the fact that we have one of the highest labor densities in the country, and I think it's part and parcel of why we have so many things here in Washington State that other people don't have. So thank you for that. On ICE, we have a whole plan that includes talking to and organizing with our state, because we're on the sanctuary cities list, right? So sanctuary state, sanctuary cities list, which just means we provide refuge and we're compassionate for immigrants of all legal statuses here. And so we have been working with Seattle Public Schools. We've talked to all of the state agencies. We have a Know Your Rights thing on our website. If you go to jayapal.house.gov, you can download the Know Your Rights piece because we want people to know what their rights are. We've been working with immigrant rights organizations. Obviously, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, having founded the largest one in the state. So we're in very close contact with a whole network of groups, organizations, agencies to make sure that we do everything we can if ICE does to us what they've done to LA. But it is happening already, and it's not happening in the force that is happening in LA, but we are, I have toolkits that I provided as the top Democrat on the Immigration Subcommittee. I've created toolkits for members of Congress to understand how they can fight back against things that are happening in their districts. And then we've been holding shadow hearings on all of the ways in which the Trump administration is destroying and going after immigrants of all legal statuses. And so it's sort of a combination of both planning what we do in that situation, plus making sure that we're educating our communities. Resistance Lab also has a lot that is around immigration and how you can fight back as members of the community on that. So I feel like, I can't say we're prepared, but we have the things in place that we can try to mount as ferocious of a defense as we possibly can in that situation. So thank you for the question. Christian nationalism and using faith, our preacher, thank you so much. Look, this is something that particularly, our folks who are religious, who are Christians, are trying to do in the hearings, in various forums where Republicans are, saying that they care about families and that they are Christians and all this stuff, and people are pointing out passages in the Bible. This is not me, but other people who are very familiar and who are Christians themselves. And I do think we have to continue to call out the hypocrisy. I call out the hypocrisy all the time on things that I feel competent to be able to do that on. I think we have been working with a number of faith organizations as well to try to build a movement of faith organizations to stand up. I mean, this is where the Pope has been incredibly helpful on this, right? Because I mean, who else do you want to listen to on this topic? And so I absolutely agree with you that we should continue to utilize the hypocrisy of them saying that they are Christian and then doing everything that the Bible says you should not do. The comments about us being outliers. Look, this is the thing. I am privileged to represent a district like this one, where you elect somebody like me, right? And we agree, you and I agree about where we are in the country. That is not where most of the country is. And so I think that's probably the frustration that a lot of people feel, is like, why doesn't everybody see it the way we see it? I mean, right? Why don't people see it the way we see it? They don't. And so, we have to do that work, and that's gonna take some time because they've taken over the communications systems. I mean, there's all this disinformation, and we're constantly having to fight back against that. So I have been really trying to think about what are simple ways to frame it. I never call it the big beautiful bill. I call it the big bad betrayal because it's a betrayal, and people should see it as a betrayal of them, right? A lot of the people who may have even voted for Trump, we welcome them back in. Because we should be able to disagree on certain things without destroying the ability for everyone to thrive. So that is exactly what we're doing. On education, absolutely. I didn't totally understand. I think you were saying I didn't support canceling student debt, but I've been one of the most vocal people about canceling all student debt. And we got, a significant way under President Biden. We were able to actually move that ball. We canceled a lot of debt, but not everything. My College for All bill actually says, why should the federal government, everyone should have a free higher education, whether it's a community college or a four-year college, a trade school. Why does the federal government profit from the interest that people pay? So we get rid of that, and we provide a free, this is my bill with Bernie Sanders. And so this has been, one of the animating issues for me since I ran for Congress. So I'm on every bill to cancel student debt and have led a lot of those efforts as well, and will continue to, because I do believe education is absolutely, here's the thing, it's not just an investment in the individuals, it's an investment in us as a country, right? Okay, I'll speak to these 3 last questions, and then I'll wrap up.
Madam Congresswoman, I apologize for my disruptive behavior. You are a trusted person who has a lot of lives hanging on air, and I thank you for that. I was disrupted to make a point that I did not want to stand in a room full of strangers and make an ass of myself. I really didn't. But I do it at bus stops. I do it at restaurants. I do it anywhere I go, any bank. Anytime a chihuahua barks next to me, anytime a car backfires, a car door shuts, I would still be laying on the floor screaming right now. I ask all of you, when you get home tonight, to look at the pictures of your family and ask who you want to bury. I was shot in the head. I'm not supposed to be here. I should be dead. 3 millimeters, my head would have exploded. Somebody wanted me to talk. I apologize to each of you. I can get out, it's okay. I apologize to each of you. I did not mean to be disruptive, but please understand, if anybody else in this room had banged, right now I would still be laying on the floor screaming.
Hi. Oh, great. You touched, or it's been touched on the effect of the big bad bill on people with disabilities, both physical and mental, and many that were born with these. Many folks were born with them. So throughout their lives, they've had terrible challenges to face. And, the government has helped out with supporting them. Now, with when they reach the retirement age, they don't have any money saved up because many of them have had jobs of some type but have been unable to put money away for retirement. So when they do retire, they had to spend whatever money they had down to the point where they could get Medicaid, and they need to rely on Medicaid funds for the rest of their life. But the big bad bill is going to take away those Medicare funds from all these people with disabilities. So I think that's something that needs to be amplified because there's a huge number of people with disabilities in this country. I think, what is it, 5 or 10% or something like that have some kind of disability. So is there any movement in Congress to support those folks when the Medicaid is pulled away from them by Trump?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. David, you reminded me that I didn't mention that the Big Bad Betrayal Bill sets up a $500 billion cut to Medicare as well. And so that is also part of this. David and I have been working on Medicare for All and also on reining in the waste, fraud, and abuse of Medicare Advantage, what I call Medicare Disadvantage. Which is private insurance companies scamming people. And so when you look at this, you know, Medicaid covers so many different things, right? It covers care for people with disabilities, it covers care for long-term care, it covers nursing home care, it covers care for folks who don't have other health insurances. So there's so many different ways, and our healthcare system is so, it's not a system, actually. It's a for-profit entity that puts the interests of profits ahead of the interests of patients. And so we have been working very hard to figure out how we make sure that we can address all of the different holes that the Big Bad Betrayal Bill is going to cause in Medicaid, in Medicare, in the Affordable Care Act, and ultimately, we need a system that is not this complicated and does not put the power in the hands of insurance companies.
Single payer.
To be a single payer, that's what Medicare for All is. And we're absolutely going to get there. I'm sorry, wait, one more question.
Yeah, one more question.
I jumped without, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Jayapal. Thank you for being here. When the people are ready for a general strike, will you call for a general strike? Will you support it?
Yeah.
So that's one part of my question. The second part is, are there any plans for the progressives to break away from the Democratic Party? Because I have frankly lost hope. The Democratic Party put forward a candidate, Kamala Harris, who said she wants the U.S. to be the most lethal fighting force in the world. That does not exemplify any peace. I have lost hope. I don't think I can vote Democratic anymore, definitely not Republican. Preferably a socialist feminist party. Is there any hope for that?
Thank you so much. The first part of your question just reminded me that I didn't write it down.
Strike, general strike.
Okay, strike, great. Yes, so we are, working to figure out what that disruptive action is and to make sure that we're working with our labor unions, with workers, because this is the most effective, we talk about this in resistance lab, this is the most effective and most disruptive form of, attacking economic, the capitalist system that is propping up the dictators. And so, but we have to get to a place where we're going to be able to pull it off successfully, whether it's a general strike, whether it's targeted rolling strikes. There are different things that are being discussed right now. And so, yes, absolutely. As soon as I feel like it can be, we've got what we need to do that, then I think we have to consider all of that. That's part of what Resistance Lab is also designed to talk about. In terms of, look, I think the Democratic Party, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2020. Part of the reason that we were able to get so much progressive change done under Joe Biden, who was not a progressive, is because, he was not running as a progressive, is because Bernie and Elizabeth were also in the primary. And it really allowed us to have candidates who pushed for more progressive, bold policies that I think we really need. I wish we had a multi-party system in this country. I don't really want to be in the same party as Kirsten Sinema or Shelby. I wish we had a multi-party system. We don't. We have a two-party system. So what are the ways that we can make sure that we are pushing the Democratic Party to be as bold as possible? And I think I was proud of the Progressive Caucus when I headed it to really hold the line over and over again and insist that we ultimately passed our BBB, Build Back Better bill through, which had universal health healthcare, it had all of the, it had massive, not just Medicare negotiation for a few drugs, it actually was significant negotiation, a lot of different things that we pushed for. But we do need to be able to, I think, field a primary that has a lot of different candidates running who can respond to the boldness that I think the American people do want, and that will bring back a lot of people who have lost faith in the Democratic Party. And so I hope we can work towards that. That is our